Hey. I don't know if anybody's on here yet, but I'm excited. Hey, Assalamualaikum. We are just letting people come in. I am also pulling up some of my notes because that's what we do. So sit back just for a little bit and we will begin shortly. I'm not here. Hey, Greg. I was just telling everybody that we are just taking some time for people to come on in. Hey y'all. Just letting people come on in. Also, as I pull up my notes, that's what I need to do. So, I hope everybody is doing good today. I'm doing really good today. I'm also I'm on it. There's just a lot going on, and so I'm trying to make sure that I am tuned in to all the things that are going on, but also being in the moment. You know what I mean? I want to be able to focus on the task at hand while I'm in the task at hand, and then move on when that's needed. So, and then also got new hair. Trying gets a little different, but we're working with it. One second, y'all. Ooh, we need you. Right here is where we need you. So yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and send this out to folks. How are y'all doing today? Everybody doing pretty good? My bad, y'all. I'm really taking time to send all these invitations to folks. Cause that's what we on right now. Since I left out. Ooh, we need you. Right here is where we need you. I really love this song. Alright, that's it. I can't send it to nobody else. They said. Alright. A few of those out. Like I said, we're gonna let people come on in. Yeah, but in the meantime, we're just gonna do a little waiting game. Mommy, my mom's in here. Y'all, Mom, I don't think you understand how much I appreciate you being here every week. I know 1 week you were a little late and I was like, where's my mom? I didn't realize how much it affected me having you in the live. So, and I'm excited for us to do our own live. Me and my mom are gonna go live for Bag Talk around Mother's Day, and it's gonna be good. So I'm excited about that. Trying to let a few more people. Thanks, Mama. I appreciate you. But yeah, we just letting a few more people get up in here. And then we will go ahead and get started. This week has been one hell of a week in a really great way. So, yeah, I've just been taking it all in. I've had a number of things from therapy to acupuncture to random, notes from the universe telling me that I need to be the one deciding who Khadijah is, right? Because, as empaths, we take on other people's shit, their emotions, their baggage, all the rest of that. And I've done that a lot in my life, right? And I've based a lot of who I am off of what people have told me I am. And so, I'm at this point in life where I'm like, you know what? I need to decide who I am. And so that's kind of what I've been going through. And so I think this conversation around therapy is going to be great because that's what helped me get to this realization that I'm in now. So yes. I know we got a good amount of people up in here. So I do want to go ahead and start. Hello, y'all. Welcome to Bag Talk. It is a space where we are able to have deep conversations and connections. And this week is incredibly special because we have a man on here. I know usually my guests are mostly women, but I wanted to shake things up and I wanted to do things different and bring on a male energy. I think it's important that, not just us women have these deep conversations, but we also have the same with our brothers, right? Our brothers have them, and then we are able to have those conversations collectively. And so I thought Greg was a perfect person to bring on here to have those conversations today. I've known Greg from back in my organizing and activism days back at AFSC. And I would go up to Philly all the time because that's where AFSC is located, which is Americans Friends. Oh my God, I can't even remember. That was a long time ago. Quaker Association, something. But yeah, I knew Greg from back then, and him and his wife, they have been like mentoring youth, and like, you can really tell that they have a stronghold in the community. Even when I posted I was having him up here, I had a few people from Philly who I did not know from AFSC hit me up and say, "Oh my God, that's so dope, Greg is there." And so, he's with the community and he's with the people and he's doing the work, and he's really a big advocate of therapy. And so, of course I had to have him on here today so we can have that conversation. So I want to go ahead, and before I dig in and talk more about him, I just want to go ahead and have him join now so we can start the conversation. So let me figure out how to request Greg. Do that now. Hey.
Hey, what's going on?
How you doing?
I'm doing good. How are you?
I'm doing amazing. It's a long time no see. I feel like it's been a nice amount of time since the AFSC days.
I know. It's definitely been a nice amount of time.
Yes. So, like, how have you been? How have things been?
I've been pretty good. I must say. I'm looking at the circle on your face right now because I'm just trying to make sure that my signal is okay.
Oh, snaps.
So I'm like, oh, she stopped moving when I joined. So I wonder if it's my signal.
I can see you on my end.
Okay, you see me moving and everything?
Yeah.
Okay, let me clean this camera a little bit. Okay. All right. But no, I've been pretty good. Just adjusting. I have a child now. My son is 18 months. I'm married to Halana, who you were speaking with. And, it's a different level of responsibility from a life partner perspective and also from a perspective of being a father, especially in 2022 with so many different challenges, So, that's kind of where everything is for me.
Oh, that's beautiful. I'm hoping that we can kind of also get into those things as far as like fatherhood and what that, transition has been like for you, as a Black man and building with your beautiful Black wife and your family and stuff like that. Cause I feel like these conversations are important. We don't have them enough, but before I dive
Agreed.
deep, we just go straight into another topic. I spoke a little bit about you, but for the people who, are on my end and don't necessarily know who you are, can you tell the good folks, who is Greg Corbin?
Yes, I would say Greg is a human being first, Black man, a son, uncle, a father, a husband, a healer, a community activist, a poet, storyteller, nonprofit exec. I've done a lot, wore a lot of hats. So I would say, in the context of those multiple identities or multi-hyphenate, that's what I am. I'm a hip hop head. I love having fun. I love getting to the root. I love being radical, and being radical means getting to the root of a problem. I'm a disruptor because I want to bring solutions, and we know we live in a country that makes its money off of problems and conflict. So once you start curing and fixing things and being a solutionary, then you become a problem, so to speak.
Yeah, that's actually a good point. Like you said, you love getting to the root of things. And like I said, I've known you from organizing and activism. That's one way to get to the root of things, but also, I know you've been doing a lot of talks around advocating for Black men to go to therapy. And then that's another way, you know, for
Yeah.
Black men to be able to go to the root and to do their healing, you know?
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. I think you mentioned something that was really, really powerful. You said, going to therapy really helped you get to your core, really help you take off these different parts of who you are, these subliminal agreements or subconscious agreements that live underneath who you are in that moment. And it sounded like you did um, some real strong soul searching. That brings up a lot of things because the question is, are you willing to crack open the fault lines and
Ooh.
become your own earthquake? Right, poetically speaking.
Ooh.
That's the poem. That's the poetic person in me. Right,
Yeah.
but then the earthquake being a metaphor. Are you willing to live with the tremors of change that happen in your life from the inside out? Because you have to change the way you relate with yourself first.
Yes.
And once you change the relationship with yourself and you accept the changes that are starting to happen, you start to remove people indirectly from your life because you're no longer in alignment with who
Mm-hmm.
they are, where they are, when they are. And that's why you see these moments where you may leave somebody alone as a friend, whoever, for like 2 or 3 years, and then they just come back because you fell back in alignment again. And now you can have certain conversations that will keep you communing, which
Mm-hmm.
creates community. Because community is not just, you by yourself. Once you have another person that you can talk to, now you're in community, right?
Yeah.
And in collaboration, right?
Right.
Um, there's this young rap group I like. Their name is Coast Contra. They've been going viral all over the place. They remind me of leaders in the new school and Wu Tang from like the early '90s. And
I
they
know.
just got this, what I'm
Yeah.
talking about? Oh
Yeah.
my
Yeah. Yeah.
gosh. It's
Yeah.
just they're on a whole nother level, but you can see the hive mentality, like a purposeful mastermind approach to music making and being a group. And
Mm-hmm.
so I think we have to continue to figure out where community is, whether that's one, two, three, 20 people around us, 100 people around us, right? And so as long as people are willing to get to the core or the root of their issues for whatever they signed up to experience on this planet, because all of it's about leveling up spiritually and
Right.
ascending to a higher plane, right?
Mm-hmm.
I thought about where I wanted to do this live, right? And things got off schedule with the little guy this evening. I ended up having to give him a bath and all this stuff, and I was like, you know what? I'm gonna do it outside because I wanted to be close to nature when I have this conversation, right? There's a tree behind me on purpose. Everything I'm doing right now is intentional, and when
Mm-hmm.
you become intentional about how you relate to yourself and how you see the world and what you want to bring to the world, you start using all these different elements to get in your bag spiritually, so to speak.
Come on now. We done barely got into it, but we got into it. Like, oh my
Hmm.
goodness. Like, but there are a few things that you said, right? You talked about, when once you start really digging in your core and that foundation, it becomes like an earthquake, right? And you have those tremors and you crack open, right? And like, that's big because I feel like people always talk about like spirituality in this like, oh, everything's wonderful kind of way. And it's like when you're really doing that work, you're doing your spiritual work, you're doing your therapy, the rest of that, like you gonna get cracked open like an egg, like it's gonna be scrambled, all of that. Like it's going to be a lot. But the beauty and blessing of all of that is having a new toolbox that has all these tools in there. So while you are digging through that suitcase, and looking at the things of your baggage and looking at the things you don't need, it is easier for you to discern because of the tools that you have in there. So, like,
Hmm.
I'm glad that you brought that up. Therapy has been absolutely amazing. And then you brought up another point around community,
Right.
and whether, community could be it could be me and you are having community here, right? Spiritual with
Exactly.
is its own community. What you have is its own community, right? And right now we're merging all those forces together. And so I do think, this is one of the reasons why I enjoy having these conversations. And I like deep conversations with everyone that I talk to, but specifically on this live because I feel like, it encourages other people to have these deeper level connections and build community in that way because it's needed.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
absolutely needed.
Yeah. And I think that's something we have to continue to dig deeper in. as we
Mm-hmm.
push back against the capitalism that we've internalized, that's become our religion in some ways, that
Mm-hmm.
teaches us that individuality will win. It's the Hunger Game mentality, no matter what it is. And you may have even seen this play out in social justice. Capitalism is just as ruthless as anything when you see revolution or radical work on the ground. What about me? What about me? The narcissism, the lack of
Woo!
validation, the narcissism kicks in. And I'll
Yep.
be I'll be one of the first people to admit there's definitely a lot of change that I've been able to make because of my own personal attachments to my brokenness and my inner child and my own narcissism. When I wasn't feeling validated or when I wasn't feeling good enough. Oh,
Mm-hmm.
you don't love me? Well, guess what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna go over here and change the world, and at least ethically, people will cheer my name, and they gonna love me too, and they gonna clap for me too, right? Because this is the
Woo!
stuff people don't want to get at. Like our shadows work for the good as well. We just don't know how to interact with them, you know, because we're not taught this stuff in school. We're not taught how to
Yeah.
relate to our dark side, right? It's like the Sith on Star Wars, right? The dude knew how to go in and out of certain energies. The Sith, he knew how to play to Darth Vader, the young Darth Vader, he knew how to play to his wounds. He knew how to play to his needs. He knew how to get in his mind in a way that would twist him up emotionally, where his loyalties will be split between good and bad. And
Woo!
eventually, he had so much arrogance put on him by his own ego. When he went to fight Obi-Wan Kenobi, who was the young OG at that time, he
Mm-hmm.
was actually sitting on a mountain. He said, "Don't do it. I got the high ground. Don't do it." He begged him, "Don't do it. Don't test me. I got the high ground." That's wisdom speaking. That's
Mm-hmm.
elevation speaking, right?
Mm-hmm.
I got the high ground. He jumped, he cut Darth Vader's arm off. And he was like in whatever it was in the movie, he fell into the river and was gone. And he was hurt because he had to like strike down his mentee. And then he was hurt because the mentee got struck down by his mentor, but it was all because he got twisted up by that voice, the Sith, who was playing with his dark side. He brought his
Mm-hmm.
dark side out to the surface, and then it started working. And so we have a choice. Do we want to play with light or do we want to play with dark?
Woo!
Because the only way to get brighter on this planet, in a lot of ways, is to go through your darkness.
Yeah, when I tell you, maybe a year ago, I would have been like, I don't know if that's necessarily true. I want to think positive and live positive and be, and not to say that you can't do that, but this healing journey that I'm in now, like, I see that, like, it's easy for me to be thrown in the midst of like darkness, but not in like the kind of darkness that you're thinking that maybe some are thinking about here, right? But for me, it's like a darkness of like looking at my old self, right? Like you
There
said,
you go.
your old self, and you're looking at that and like, okay, do I need you to take over right now? Like, I understand you've done a really great job of protecting me and keeping me safe and putting up these boundaries. But where I'm going, are you needed there? And so having those kind of conversations with myself and really being able to discern when it's time to let go. Like, my goodness, it really is. It can be a battle at times, you know, especially when you're trying to heal.
Yeah, yeah. My book, Breathing Ashes, is titled A Poetic Guide to Walking Through Fire and Coming
Mm-hmm.
Out Reborn, because I purposely wanted to put 15 years of work in there. People ask me, how long did it take you to write your book?
Mm-hmm.
And I say 15 years, because it's 15 years of material from 2005 to 2021,
Mm-hmm.
right? And the challenge of that is really being okay with being vulnerable and okay with being transformative and okay with showing people what it looks like when perfectionism isn't at play, when the celebration of a flaw is at play,
Mm-hmm.
right? And I think often we hide because this is a country that makes its money off its secrets, right? It's an illusion. The idea, celebrity and fame, it's an illusion. We celebrate people based on them being in prime time or having a blue check mark. Like, look at our verification system on if a person has dignity and integrity. It's manipulative, it's manufactured, right? And I think once we get to a place where we're okay with the audience we attract, right? Some of decolonization is being okay with not being recognized on some big giant platform, right? Like, what if your message is not in the scheme of divine timing, where you aren't technically supposed to, based on spiritual and divine design,
Mhm.
to grab a million people at that moment? Maybe
Mhm.
it's when you're 53 years old, when maybe you're Tabitha Brown, right?
Yeah.
Maybe
Yeah.
you bust your butt for 20 years and all of a sudden, bam, people love you because they arrived at you. You were trying to get them, but they had to catch up to you.
They have to catch up to you. Whoo, that's real. That's also I think a good message for people to have right now, especially it's like everywhere you look, it's like take my course and do Airbnb, and you gonna be like me with the private planes. Like it's a very Instagram is a
I
very
ain't
fun
gonna get into the
place
private plane stuff, yo.
with many promises all over the place, and it can get absolutely ridiculous.
Woo!
But I did want to shift to some of the questions that we had here.
Let's go. Let's go.
Preparing for this conversation, it really brought up a lot of questions and like topics and angles. Like my brain was just buzzing. Like I love black men. My daddy, my daddy's a black man. I'm a daddy's girl. I've loved many of black men. My ancestors that really go hard, the hardest for me, like the ones that I can feel, are black men.
Hmm.
But with that being said, I also feel like there is a lot of healing that is needed for our black men, especially right now, right? As a black man, what has inspired you to really take your healing seriously and go to therapy?
Mm. So I talk about this a little bit in the book, right?
Mhm.
And I talk about the shedding, and you mentioned a little bit about the older versions of you. Well, my older versions continue to show up in my life as if they deserve to be in my present. And righteously so, because I wasn't being aware, which is a lot of growth is about perspective shifting and how we view exchanges and interactions in life.
Mhm.
So in 2008, the first time I went to therapy, it was me trying to save a relationship with another person. Maybe after 5 sessions, I started to realize the lack of authenticity of me even going, because I realized it wasn't about me. I
Mm.
was trying to save a relationship with somebody else instead of saving a relationship with myself.
Woo!
So I stopped going, right?
Mm.
I stopped going after we broke up, and that clearly is an indicator that I wasn't going for myself, right?
Exactly.
And then, like 10 years later, I had my own breakdown. I just had an anxiety attack, a nervous breakdown. I felt too much pressure. I was burnt out. Everything converged at this one moment. And I was just like crying, like on the
Mhm.
sidewalk. And it just, you know, it was really, 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 really intense. And I was just like, yo, I got to get out of this, right? I got to do something differently, right? So I went straight to therapy, and I haven't stopped going. And I'll go mostly every week, and sometimes I'll do stretches of every other week,
Mhm.
because the goal is to continue to develop myself and stay ahead of my own curve. I'm in competition with no one. I'm interacting with my spiritual agreement and divine destination on this planet. Like,
Mm.
that's at the end of the day, I can have all these goals, but if I'm not in peace, which is priceless, if I'm not living in my joy and mastering how to create my joy, then
Mhm.
what am I doing? Because therapy for me has made me ask questions about, okay, how do I relate to my gender? So how do I perform masculinity? These are the questions I was asking.
Mhm.
Okay, so when it came to race, how do I perform blackness? Okay, when it came to my sexual orientation, how do I perform heterosexuality? Okay, when it came to class, how do I perform being in the middle, right?
Mhm.
And when it came to education, how do I perform being the college graduate, first one on my dad's side,
Mm.
right? And all this, what I realized, all the pressure I was putting on myself, as if I had to be the hero for somebody else's narrative.
Woo!
I had to start editing it, and it landed me in consistent practice of asking challenging questions while shifting and shedding the parts of me that no longer needed to be here, and
Mm.
keeping the stuff that was working, keeping the gifts, keeping the talents, keeping the growing edges, the stories of learning, keeping the wisdom, not the wounds. I fight not to keep the wounds. I fight to keep the wisdom. That's an everyday battle.
Oof. I had a few questions, but it's interesting how, you first getting introduced to therapy, like you said, wasn't even for you realize it wasn't for your own self, right? It was for the sake of a relationship. You know what I mean? And I find that interesting because often we do so much for other people, not realizing we need to put that same energy and care into ourselves.
Yes.
Yeah. And so, and it was big of you to recognize that, after left from therapy, the relationship didn't work. And then you went through your own experience where the earthquake happened. And you know what I mean? Like, figuratively, that earthquake happened and you felt like, you know, life was just happening. You needed to figure out, and you realize, let me go back to therapy for myself. For most people, like, especially, well, I don't want to say this, but a lot of the men that I do know that go to therapy, I haven't necessarily heard of them going consistently for longer periods of time. Like,
Mm.
usually I hear of men being like, oh, I went like 5 sessions and it was cool, like, and that was great, and I'm out of here. Like, what made, what made you feel like, I need to be in here consistently?
Because my therapist would identify where I was blame shifting, where I was escaping accountability. And it came out so fluidly and so habitually.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, I need to keep going. Because if I can approach my life like everything is because of the decisions I make, then that takes responsibility off of somebody else. Even if they did make a choice, even if they did do something to me, they did make a choice, there's responsibility on their part. But how
Right.
was I engaging with that relationship? And I think once I started seeing these patterns and complaining and living in my own dramas, I was like,
Mm-hmm.
I have to write a different story. This is not okay. And
Mm-hmm.
I go to my therapist because he keeps me accountable to the person that I say I want to be, which means I have to work consistently. Like I said, it's an everyday battle. People think you go into therapy and it just voila. The other myth about therapy is you're gonna go in there and somebody's gonna open you up and you're gonna be crying all over the place. You're gonna just be in pain. Well, that's true. That's
Yeah.
true. And a lot of therapists would say that's a good session because that means things are starting to shift internally.
Mm-hmm.
But there are moments I go in there and I am not crying. I am saying good about everything in my life. Everything is in joy. Everything's working. Everything's working.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, I'm wondering what that, you know, somebody just said it's a process. That's extremely true. I wonder, like, what's the switch in my head that gets me into that place where all I see is the good, right?
Mm.
And I'm a Cancer. I'm a water sign, right?
Yeah.
And I can be very pessimistic, especially when I'm tired. And
Mm-hmm.
he challenged me. He said, I want you to start seeing the good in everything.
Mm.
I want you to start looking for that. At least acknowledge the good, even if it's not all good. He wants me to start working on the good. So it's been a blessing. My commitment is to stay consistent with that.
I'm glad. I'm glad that you were able to stay consistent and you were able to see the beauty in that. My hope is that, like, the takeaway from some of us in here is that therapy is not just a one and done, it is a maintenance. The same way
Yeah.
that we get car tune-ups, the same way that we got to eat breakfast, lunch, and dinner, the same way that you take baths, like, it's a maintenance and it's a ritual, right? Especially if you say that you are trying to grow in the way that you want to grow, right? And you want to heal in the way that you want to heal, then you need to be deliberate about creating a practice around that, and not no one and done practice, but a real practice. I do have questions around, like, how was it finding a therapist for you, like one that you felt like really understood you
I
as a
went to
woman?
some. I guess I got lucky because I hear my man Lee is in here too, and here shout out to Meek and Lady Siren, a couple of names I just saw. Anybody else I didn't see your name? Much love to you for joining this conversation. Um, I got lucky. because I hear about the one, two, three times. I got lucky. Somebody, my wife, she went online and she found them. She just was like, I think it was like something in Philadelphia where I could locate therapists, and it just popped up. Like I was like, all right, I'll try him, and I talked to him, and I just went for it. I literally was led, and you know, I'm blessed. I'm blessed because you're allowing me to see how challenging that can be for other people. Because it is like dating. It
Yeah.
is like trying to find the right match, right? You're looking for somebody in alignment. You're looking for somebody that has your experience, can relate to your lived experience, can relate to the identities, and that's the best thing for him. He understands the the development of identity in multiple ways. And he's like, okay, Greg, are you talking about professional life or personal life, right? So if we talk about professional, he'll be like, it sounds like some of your personal is bleeding into the professional because you signed up for the script. I allow that job description. You committed, you agreed to do these things that way, right? But
Yeah.
then, right, certain things are popping up that go against your personal values. So he'll help me see that, in which I have to make a decision, right? Because if I'm working in a place where my value system is compromised, then I need to make a decision that's best for me. Whether that's speak up, advocate for a situation that's better for my work environment, or I leave, create my own work environment as an entrepreneur and mentally inside my mind, or I go somewhere else that I'm aligned with.
Hmm. I love that your wife was able to help you connect, with a database that allowed for you to find a really good therapist for yourself. Black women, we always trying to advocate for the right love, and so I love being able to see that and to see our relationship. Like I've seen y'all at that, during back in the day, and it's something that I've always loved. Just that good black love. What was I about to say? What's my next question? So this one's a really interesting one, right? The
Go
internet is
for it.
of trigger words and clickbait titles. And, one of the words that have social media in a tizzy right now is toxic masculinity and narcissists.
I wonder why.
Both are very real things because I can't act like they're not because I've run into some interesting individuals. And I think they're real words, right? But, you know, they're a lot deeper than these 15-second clips that we are seeing on social media and on the internet. A lot of the things that we're seeing when it comes to these descriptions of like toxic masculinity is very much like a post and go. It doesn't go deep. It doesn't talk about, what has gotten someone to that place or anything like that, right? Can you speak to what conditions you feel like create those kind of issues and what healing can look like around that?
Mm, mm. I think the word toxic is, so we have to be careful about the labels that we use as a way to define someone's moment.
Ooh.
That's a
Ooh.
moment. That's not them as a whole person.
Yeah.
I'm looking at this through a restorative lens now,
Yeah.
where you address the behavior, you address the action in the moment, right? Because if I say a person is this thing, now I've imprisoned them in this idea, in this image. And then when I
Mm-hmm.
put that label on them, I'm no different than the government creating all types of language and labels for people that they want to marginalize, right?
Ooh.
The other part is, what does it mean to be toxic? Because sometimes people aren't toxic, they're just doing something that makes you uncomfortable, right? So I
Mm-hmm.
think there are toxic behaviors for sure. I like to use the words unhealthy or non-productive
I like that.
because I understand what has happened and how we allow ourselves to be used against one another. Remember, the enemy wins when we can't collaborate.
Mm.
It's easier to produce hate and not enough love.
Mm-hmm.
It's just easy because everything is separation. And then what happens if I put a label on somebody, oh, they're toxic. And I've definitely had people call me toxic and somebody else believes it. And I'm like, damn, you really? Okay, me and that person had a specific experience together that involved maybe one or two interactions that they didn't agree with and I didn't agree with. And that's the language they choose to use about me. I kept my mouth shut because my integrity and my dignity is more important. And I can't pass judgment and I got to be mature, right?
Right.
And there are moments I definitely will speak up. But I think also you got to look at, I want to look at it through yin and yang, right?
Mm-hmm.
And yin and yang is more like looking at it from the perspective of there's feminine and there's masculine. You got feminine would be, and this is I'm looking at this through a more Asian Eastern medicine wing of thinking, right?
Right.
And I know my face looks like a little glowworm right now, so hopefully that's okay. Um,
Yeah.
but feminine would be, passive and patient, introspective. Here's the crazy part. I actually think introspection and patient is more powerful than the other stuff,
Mm,
because that will set you up for surrender, which is extremely necessary. But then there's masculine, which is like external, assertive, domineering, right? Logical, very logical. It is important to practice balance,
mm,
especially in leadership, whether you're leading a house or you're leading a team or you're leading yourself. You don't want
mm.
to get too emotional and you don't want to get too logical. So for me, it always comes back to balance, right? There's moments when I can be too in my head,
Right.
too introspective. Now I can't act, which is seen as a masculine trait, right?
Mm-hmm.
And this is what's interesting. When you look at it through this framework, you'll see there are women who could be and perform in hyper masculine ways too.
Mm-hmm.
And nobody wants to touch that because we've seen it when it might be a single mother raising a boy and taking the energy out on the boy instead of the father who's not there,
Yes,
right?
that's
These are the things that we don't want to acknowledge because it's a convenient thing to be right in our arguments instead of looking at how we can expand. I'm not interested in being right. I'm not interested in being right. I'm using a framework to address a certain thing, such as toxic masculinity. I'll never forget, like 4 years ago, it was everywhere. Toxic masculinity. That's
yeah.
toxic masculinity. That's toxic. He put too much sugar in his Kool-Aid. That's toxic masculinity. Right? And I hope nobody don't think I'm trolling or being insensitive. But at this point, I know I need to have balance because I'm extremely serious sometimes. And I need to produce my own humor because it simply is put, now there is a lot of hyper violent acts that have been perpetuated by patriarchy that have
Yeah.
marginalized women, right? I read something the other day. I think I heard it, and I'm not in the room when this thing happens, right? This is years ago, but I think
Mm-hmm.
it was the Rothschilds. They said to this guy, "You know why we funded the women's liberation movement? This is crazy." The guy said, "Because we realized we couldn't tax more than half the population anyway. When we got when we started giving women their rights, they can go to work and they can get taxed. But it also is easier to send more children to school so they can be indoctrinated."
Mm.
So I need to do my own research on this. It was a video and it made me think, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
whoa, the best way to control people is to indoctrinate them, to
Yeah, true.
control their language, to
Yeah.
reduce their words, right? So I think it's a matter of us being more open-minded and digging deeper. Once again, getting to the radical truth. Now, like I said, I've empowered myself to use different language,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because there are a lot of men out here causing harm because the perpetuation of certain things in culture, certain things in entertainment that say that's how you do it. That's necessary. That's when you do it, right? And I believe we'll get to something in this conversation,
Yeah.
and I could feel like we're dovetailing right into it,
Right,
you
right.
know? So I'm gonna pause.
Um, I do like what you said around talking about, how everybody's saying, toxic masculinity, and they're taking a snapshot of that person and making that who they are, not realizing that there's a whole bunch of things that make up that person. And, life goes on outside of that one moment in time. But is it the best that we stamp a label on someone and decide that's who they are for the rest of their life?
Mm,
That's something that I had to learn even myself when dealing with someone who was an ex and was, participating in some very unhealthy behaviors. I'll say that
mm,
instead of the other word, right? And I was really, really upset, but I had this dream. And in the dream, I was so upset at the person for what they did to me that I was trying to get revenge in a way that locked me into a video game, so to speak, right? And
wow.
so I wasn't able to really see the world around me. I was stuck in this mode of viewing this person through this thing, and that became the only way that I was able to see them, and that became the only way, how I was moving about my life, right? Not realizing that I was trapped, right? Labeling that person not only trapped them, but it trapped me because it trapped my feelings in that moment in time. Am I making sense? Do you get what I'm
Oh
trying to say?
yeah. Oh yeah. 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 Definitely.
Yeah, and so
Definitely.
that's something that like over the years, especially recently, that I've been learning to let go of. You know, that dream when it happened, I understood it, but I didn't really understand it the way that I do now. You know what I mean? But I do think it is important that, you know, when we when a person makes an act that is quote unquote toxic, that we do also realize that it's bigger than that one act, and there's a lot of things that go into making a person behave the way that they do. And oftentimes not everybody has the therapy or have they went through the therapy, and some of the things that they went through in life have caused them to act and to be triggered in this certain way. It doesn't mean that you gotta, you gotta take it, and it doesn't mean that, because of that you have to, you know you could like excuse their behavior, but I do think it's important in understanding why a person behaves the way that they do. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
um So I just found that note really interesting, with what you were saying. But we do have a good question. Well, I don't know if you
Well,
had.
I just want to say thanks for sharing that, though. I didn't want to skip past what you said about getting locked into a certain version of you, like being emotionally charged and then being trapped in that decision around that person. And when you hear and see that person online or they pop up in your feed, it's like clang. It's like bam, 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 right? So, and I can relate to that. So, thanks for sharing that. I thought that was powerful.
You're welcome. That's my dreams. That's the way spirit be talking to me. Like, especially when
Hmm.
it's hard for me to hear anyone else, or if I'm super mad, or I'm super upset, or have these frustrations. Spirit will always come through with a dream, a big one that
Mm,
shake me up, but it sticks with me because the lesson is always like something that I really need to hear.
yeah.
Um, so speaking of unhealthy, you know, unhealthy, I don't want to say masculinity, but speaking on that and the current topics, you know, I don't know if it could have been a better week for me to have a black man on here to discuss therapy and divine masculinity. Like today, it was the week of all weeks. What was your take on what happened with Will Smith and Chris Rock? Like, it really feels like a complex issue. I really just love to understand your opinion.
My opinion, because it clearly is my opinion,
Yeah,
but I'm gonna shift it into context. Let's take a dive into what's been happening with Will Smith the last 2 years.
yeah,
A lot of online information that his family has chosen to make public.
yeah.
Taking private information, making it public, opening yourself up for scrutiny and criticism. Let's just stop right there.
Okay.
There's a lot coming at you, right? Then you choose during the quarantine to actually, actually start diving into yourself and creating your own healing journey.
Mm-hmm.
I got halfway through his book on the audio side of things. The book is long and the stories are compelling, y'all. Like
Mm-hmm.
the dude is telling, he out in himself, like he's telling the truth. You could tell he's done a lot of personal work to
Mm-hmm.
understand his actions, and he's done some stuff that's just like, ooh, like I'm listening and I'm cringing, listening to the stories. Like, damn, he said that to that person.
Yeah.
I think what what happened was the pressure of, I see people putting stuff in the comics. My man David said something about policing the protection of black women and this and that. Yo, I'm not even gonna go down that road because that's politics and that's the whole patriarchy thing, and I'm not touching that. But what
Mm-hmm.
I will touch is this: there's no excuse for what he did, right? But there are reasons. And when we say no excuse, I want to make it clear: it can't be excused, is what we're saying. I think people say things and don't really think about the semantics of what they're really saying and meaning because we're moving so fast. We all quick to judge, we quick to do things. He laughed at it first when the joke came out. I think he looked at Jada and saw her face. And he went 0 to 10 and then 60 on stage.
Right.
I did I actually thought it was part of a bit. And when it happened, you see him walk back, he smirked a little bit. It's a very interesting, you gotta look at all the little nuances. It's
It
really
is.
weird. It's really weird. It's really a weird thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he gets back to his seat and he's like, wow, just got smacked by Will Smith. Now I'm accounting like when Chris Rock says this joke and he sees Jada, it's something that he has to go home to that he is not comfortable with. So it must be so uncomfortable that he is willing to make the world uncomfortable. Because I was stunned. Two black men who I adore and admire for their talent, the
Yeah.
charisma, their ability to think outside the box, both inspiring for different reasons, have a moment of conflict in front of the world.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my God. I was like, what is this? Because I never watch it, right? And Dave said, as a bullied and abused person, it just really just seems like Chris had choice and that the bully is never held accountable. Interesting. I think this, right? Chris Rock, it's an interview that resurfaced. I think he was on a Howard Stern show or something. He talks about being bullied and experiencing sexual
Yeah.
abuse. He talks about these things, right? So it's a
Mm-hmm.
wonder why he may have became a comedian, right? And comedians can be seen as bullies too. So here's what people don't want to do. Everybody's wearing the same shoes. It's mirroring that's happening. It's just that Will is egregiously wrong because he broke a code of conduct and community agreement by putting his hands on somebody else. There's a slew of different ways he could have yelled from a seat, which would
Yeah.
have proved how dry the Oscars is, because that would have been a shock, right?
Right.
But he jumped over his hurdles. He was like, "Oh, hold my beer." Everything he could have did, and when he smacked him, he looked cool as a mug too. He walked back. I was like, "Damn, what just happened?"
Right.
And so for me, Chris held himself together. He clearly was shook, and people that saying it was staged and all that. Nah, I read body language very well as a performer, as a storyteller. You learn that stuff. It's an instinct. Chris, that didn't seem staged. And if it's staged, Chris need an Oscar for the act.
Right.
So I think at the end of the day, there's so much happening. I think Will was operating out of his own trauma. I think he was operating out of his own triggers, and it put everybody in the space of being triggered.
Yeah.
Because it's damage on people's faces. You can see it. Like it's damage across the board. The Oscars will never be the same. We're not talking about his award. We're not talking about the moment it happened. Another black man won an Oscar. Questlove, shout out to
Right.
Philly. We're
We're
not
not
talking about Will Packer, one of the
right.
best, one of the best probably mobilizers in organizing in Hollywood for black folk with Think Like a Man and Girls Trip, and just those are just a couple of his movies. And he don't make no life-changing movies. He makes fun movies to fund
Right.
his other projects. He said this, right? Will
Mm-hmm.
Packer is directing the Oscars with an all-black production team and increases the audience by 56% in 1 year. We have a choice as a community what we want to talk about, but we love the gossip, right? And so I think for me, and I had a conversation with my brother Eric Roberson, who's an amazing singer and songwriter and an author now, last night about this, because we both were just like, yo, we both was texting and was like, yo, I want to talk about it. You want to talk about it? Let's do a
Yeah.
live, right? So I did a special thank you therapy with Eric, before he goes on tour, and it's a really evolving conversation because everybody is different. And so I have a lot of thoughts, as you can see, but I'm putting it in different contexts. Like there's the trauma conversation. There's the patriarchy conversation that Dave kind of brought up, right? Policing black women's ability to protect themselves. Jada is on record saying, my bald head don't bother me. So
Yeah.
now it's kind of like, well, what really was the issue then? If she's not really bothered by it, but she also said it's a season needed for healing, and I'm here for it. And I
Mm-hmm.
think I'm waiting to see the Oprah Winfrey Sunday talk when they both are talking about repairing their relationship, and Will going deeper into why did he think that was the best way to handle it, because we clearly know that wasn't the best way, but we clearly know there's another side of the audience who feels like it was justified, deserving, and okay. But to me, if I care about somebody's humanity, I'm gonna wait to address it face to face in a different space,
Yeah.
most likely private. Even if I'm pointing to the side of the party, like, yo, please don't talk about my wife no more, my good brother. Please, please, please,
Yeah.
please, please. Because if Will Smith hits me on stage, I'm gonna remember he played Ali. I want no beef with this is Hancock. Like what?
Right. Right.
You know what I'm saying? So, I thought Chris apologized. They said that was fake.
Yeah.
So I'm praying for the healing.
Agreed.
I'm praying for harmony, but it's a bigger conversation. about how we choose, because the joke is one thing, and there's some insensitivity there, but that's what comics do, right? Um, and I don't even want to say but that's what comics do, because I think comics are evolving too. And they're like, there's a brand of comedy that is phasing out as
Mm-hmm.
people get older. There's a brand of comedy that's definitely phasing out. Um, but I think people are becoming more selective and more considerate for sure. So as you can see, I have a lot of thoughts about it, but hopefully I made that as succinct and possible from end to end, because I think the easiest thing to do is create controversy around somebody else's controversy.
Mm. 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 That right there. And that's what the internet feels like it's there for at this point, is just creating controversy off of someone else's controversy. That's the shady room, that's TMZ, that's how we operate on this good space. Shoot, before the moment that it happened, the amount of memes that were out in 2.5 seconds, or think
It
pieces
was,
the next day, was
jeez,
wild.
it was out of control. Everybody was writing a dissertation trying to go viral, it felt like.
Yep.
My statement was, I got a different understanding. Like, I express what it means when a man might say, "Don't talk about my wife," right?
Yeah.
Or like, and or somebody else who's married, somebody that maybe identify different but has a wife, right? What they
Mm-hmm.
may mean. And I talked about the pillar. I talked about the person that makes me better. And, it's crazy because somebody will take what you say about one thing out of context. I got all types of comments in this video, and I'm looking like, I don't think people really got what I was saying. And even when I clarified it, people still, you could just tell some people were just coming for the argument. And I'm like, bruh,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know who you are. I got a son and a wife. I am not going to be trolling myself online,
Mm-hmm.
right? Now, I'm going to use it. I pushed a couple people to our conversation tonight so people could hear me really address it,
Mm-hmm.
right? The way I felt like I needed to address it. Um, so that's my piece. I see wrong on both parts, but I think Will's is more egregious. You know, Straight up. Like, you putting your hands on somebody. Will is smart enough and savvy enough to bust back on Chris Rock. I would have rather seen him take the mic and say something crazy to him on stage and then just go play the dozens. And that and
Yeah.
that and I'm okay if that wasn't scripted. You know what I'm saying? But
Yeah.
the legacy of the Oscars will change forever now, and Will have to work to rebrand and refocus his energy. And I mean, stress will make you do crazy things. He said, you know what? And I don't want to leave this out. He said something powerful in his thank you speech. He basically said, I'm tired of performing. I'm tired of acting like everything is okay just because it's my job. And we all had a job like that, where we were tired of acting like it was okay because our job description told us to.
Yep.
I talked about it in the beginning of this. And I know people will say, but Greg, he's an actor. He signed up for it. He knew what he was getting himself into. It feeds his soul. He's rich. Hey, that don't mean he's not human. So
Exactly.
may we not forget the flaw of being human. May we not forget we all got skeletons and bones in our closets that we are all ashamed of. Some of
Mm-hmm.
us are just brave enough to tell the world about it.
Ooh. Yeah. Yeah. And on that stick, I was like, I don't know if that was. So my brain is thinking a lot of different about what happened then, because I feel like it's very complex.
Mm-hmm.
That's why I'm getting a little annoyed looking at a lot of these think pieces, specifically from white celebrities and
Oh
white
God.
people,
Oh God.
who
Oh
are
God.
creating a
Next.
very blanket, statement about, like, I am so shocked and I'm like, y'all, this is way more complex than what you are able to actually understand, because this ain't your culture, right? And so, like, there's just a lot of different levels to it. Like, yes, I feel like him actually slapping Chris Rock, like, you did a lot there. You didn't have to do that. There are so many other steps and so many other things that you could have done before you did that, right? But then it
Yeah.
also goes into my mind is like, you know that there are other steps. And for you to skip past those steps means that there's something going on here that we're not paying attention to, right? There's something going on there that needs to be tended to, because for him to know those steps, skip all the steps, and be like, fuck it, we throwing it out the window on the biggest night of my life. well, I don't
Sheesh.
want to say biggest night of my life, but you know, one of the biggest of my professional career, right? Something
Yeah.
is happening there. And then also I think, you know, it's an
Mm.
interesting dynamic with Chris, where it's like you make this documentary about black women and our hair, and then you go in
Oh.
here and say this about Jada, and then you said multiple things about Jada in front of white people. And so like it's also that complex of like, come on, my brother, like,
Mm. Mm.
and Will Packer doing the show, but you decide this when you want to chomp down
Mm.
on a black woman, like in this all white space, like,
Ooh.
you know, that's a complex issue too. And then it's also the thing of like, as a woman, I've been in plenty of spaces where I'm used to defending myself.
Mm.
Do you get what I'm saying? I've been on this earth for 33 years, and I've spent 33 of them being able to defend, excuse my language, just, you know, I like to cuss on my thing. Being able to defend myself from niggas on the street that is like, hey, baby girl, fuck you, you don't want to talk. Like, I'm able to defend myself from a number of things, and I'm used to doing that. And
Mm-hmm.
and I've always had a harder time where when I get with the partner and the role that they have to play when it comes to defending me, right? Like,
Mm.
I want to feel like you're able to defend me. I want that, but at the same time, I feel like there's a time and a place.
Right.
You know what I mean? And I've learned how to navigate this world in the whole time of the place, you know, time and place kind of thing, where I'm like, okay, this ain't a time for me to turn the fuck up because I got things to do, so I'm gonna leave that alone. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And so for some to have a partner come in and be like, fuck your time and place, we turn the fuck up. It's like,
Mm-hmm.
it's a lot for the brain. But then I
Yeah.
also understand we're like, you know, I want my man to protect me. And if you feel like I'm
Wow.
hurt, and so it's so complex. I feel like this is not a black and white issue that people are acting like it is. I see so many comments in here.
Yeah. I'll throw out this one thing. Because thank you, Khadijah, for putting it out there, the complexity of it. Because I think when you read things online, you see this one-sided, this is my decision, until something's happening to you, right? I think the question is the violent act of defense in that moment warranted?
Hmm.
Sunday wasn't warranted.
Mm-hmm.
The yelling before the smack would have been okay for
Yeah.
me. It would have been shocking still,
Yeah.
right? But the rage that followed his voice, like I said, I've been working with young men and boys for years, and I've seen rage, and that was like a 10-year-old version of Will Smith in that moment,
Yes.
who had no control over his environment.
Yes.
That's what I'm saying. Like I think people understand, like when you're triggered, you go into different versions of yourself. There's the fight, flight, freeze, and fawn, right? These things. And I don't know what that person inside of him at that moment, what version of him was in control, trying to get control. Because that's
Mm-hmm.
what all that was about. Control the
Mm-hmm.
narrative of 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 that I'm a masculine figure who deserves respect. So I'm gonna be hyper masculine. I'm gonna be hyper assertive. I'm gonna be unhealthily aggressive, right? All this external stuff. But like to walk on the stage and forget you in front of millions.
Yeah.
And this
No.
is, and you know, this ain't about respectability, politics, and doing things in front of white people. This is about socialization and what happens because the way we've been trained to see celebrity and the power of influence. This is different. This is going to, the meme itself, the mimetic themes that are going across the internet are going to once again be a snapshot of two of the most popular black men in entertainment that's going to send signals to other people and other groups to justify
Yes.
other behaviors, other policies, or whatever. Look, even the ones that got the money can't get it together. They fighting each other.
And they already doing it. I'm just
It's
looking all over the internet and it's everywhere. Oh no. Where did Greg go? Do y'all see Greg? Did Greg just disappear from me? Folks are their breaking point in this time. It's not about who you are in front of folks or broken globally. No, that's real. Feeling emasculated, misdirected anger, all of that is incredibly real. Y'all, are y'all seeing Greg on here? Let me see if I can. Where'd Greg go? Is he here? Greg? Invite? Oh, he's not on here. Okay. I just invited him again. I don't know what happened because the conversation was getting very good. Um, are we back?
Yo, so sorry for that. I think I did something. I was trying to. Somebody said, Greg gone. No, I'm so sorry. That's gonna be funny on your live. Anyway, I think I was trying to do something with the screen. So
Okay. Okay. It's
so
all good. I was just like, we getting to the thick of it. He gone. But yeah,
yeah,
it's
yeah, yeah. I'm so sorry.
no, you're okay. It's the whole thing is it's just a lot and it's very complex and like you said,
Yeah,
and it's hard though because it is sucky because of the night that it happened on with it, with the black man being the one producing this and then it happening between two black men and then like you said, a lot of commentators, white people, white are like having these discussions and the basis of it is like, well, see, I knew those black people couldn't get it
hmm
together. And like on one end, there's a big part of me that's like, I don't give a fuck what they're saying. You know what I mean? And
Facts,
I do
facts.
actually do feel like that. There's a big part of me that's still
hmm
like, I don't care. Like, go kick rocks.
hmm
But there's also a big part of like I'm very visual, right? But the image that keeps coming back to my head is the village or the community. Because
hmm
let's say if it was an all black space and this was an area where we had community and we had rituals, right? And as to
Yeah,
how to
yeah.
interact in these spaces, that still wouldn't be okay.
hmm
An elder would take you to the side. It would be some healing needed there, and the community would stop to create that because it still wouldn't be okay.
Yeah,
You know what I mean? Just
yeah.
because we are used to, how can I say this? I'm trying to figure out a way to say this. Just because we are used to our folks, not being as healed as they want to be and acting out of anger in certain circumstances and situations don't mean it's okay.
Facts.
You know what I mean? Especially
Right,
when you
right.
know better. Especially when we know better. That's all I'm saying. Like but then again, it's also hard because a healing journey is not linear. At any given time, any given point, you can be triggered and pushed right back to your 10-year-old version of yourself and be
That
triggered
part.
and you snap. You know what I mean? I'm even learning that to this day where like I have my triggers when it comes to certain things, especially around like worthiness and relationships and friendships and all these other things and like I had a moment where I was like snapped back to like 19-year-old Khadijah in my thought process. And I'm like, I've grown so much. How
Mm,
dare I? Like, how did I? But that's healing.
mm.
You know what I mean? It's
Yeah.
not always going to be linear. And so, it's just such a it's a complex issue. Um, I was gonna talk about another question, but I want to hop into this one because I just talked about like rituals and community, right? Like I've been reading a book called King, Warrior, Magician, and Lover by Robert Moore and Douglas Gillette. And in the first chapter, it speaks on the loss and lack of rituals as a reason as to why men feel so lost and are unable to tap into their divine masculine, right? Like to really summarize it, the lack of ritual leaves men in a perpetual state of boyhood and constantly running away from responsibilities and healing and manhood, right? The author believes that most men in the Western world suffer from this issue. Um, and I feel
Yeah.
like, what we saw on that stage was also somewhat of an example of that. What are your thoughts
Yes.
on this?
Yes.
The lack of rituals for Black men and ritual and community.
I think so. I used to teach at an African charter school named Imhotep in Philadelphia. Imhotep was like the first person to do a heart transplant, brain surgery. He was an architect. He was a governor, right? And at Imhotep, we took the seniors on a rites of passage 2 days before their graduation day for like I don't know if it's still happening, but for like 10 years straight, I know it was happening,
Mm-hmm.
right? And they was up all night. It started at 8 o'clock, ended at 8 o'clock.
Oh.
And it was intense. And I mean, it was little things like we would, you know, I think we would ask them questions and we would give them lemon, right? Like we would talk about the sour parts of life. And then the sweet parts of life was sugar. But it was such an experiential thing. And there were some other things happening that were more like fraternity, but it was like team building and testing the limits without being abusive, right?
Mm.
And I think that experience lives in your spirit and in your mind and in your heart. It's a holistic experience that makes you think deeper about how you relate to yourself, how you
Mm-hmm.
relate to others, how do you perform in a relationship, whether it's friendship or it's intimate. And when I mean intimate, I mean like, partnership and
Mm-hmm.
you know, um, beyond friendship. And I just remember a lot of those young men enjoying that and coming up to me to this day and saying, yo, y'all really like, I remember that night, or I remember taking this away. I remember doing this. I remember, and it gives thank you, Michi, got a spot on. It's subconscious, right? It lives in you, and no, that doesn't exist as much as it should. And I think that's just one example why a lot of young men are misled or misguided. And I think the other part that we can't ignore is the attack on Black fatherhood since the 50s. I mean, hundreds of years to be honest. But when we talk about systemically, you're looking at heroin in the 70s and a lot of Black men being in the war and coming back with Agent Orange and on heroin. And then in the 80s, you're talking about systemic warfare with crack being implemented into the communities, and all those Black men ended up in prisons. Then in the 90s, Clinton and his cousins told me and my generation, we ain't gonna make it to 21. So let's just pass
Mm-hmm.
this bill around prisons and being like, let's stop acting like the fathers weren't missing generations ago. And this is not the repercussions.
For
We're
real.
living in the repercussions. We're dealing with the symptoms of fatherless homes that have intentionally been set up that way. I think that's what we don't have a historical context.
Yeah.
And if we allow the information age to erase history quicker than we can create it, we ain't gonna remember how we got here either. Because when you remember that story, when you remember how many Black men were trying to provide, which is a love language for Black men,
Mm-hmm.
um,
And that's being stripped away from them.
and that being stripped away from them and through jobless communities and being put in a position to make thousands of dollars in 3 days. I mean, come on now. Like in the 80s, if I was 21 and I was in that, ooh, it'd be hard for me not to say no, even if I am killing people.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? But I think that's what we don't have our history. So that history, having that acknowledgement of history, it allows me to have grace and patience when I'm not excusing behaviors. When kids cuss me out in the classroom, first thing I'm asking is, where's your father?
Mm-hmm.
Where's your mother? Who's
Mm-hmm.
there for you? Your grandmother. Then you find out there's kids who are 16 years old taking care of their grandparents. They ain't even being kids. They caretakers already. Like
Mm-hmm.
like I think there's a lot of things that, it's it's really really challenging. It just is. So I think that's for me. I just gave you a long, very long answer, but I think the rituals, we need to be more intentional about what that looks like. I love what Phil Agnew is doing. He has something called Black Men Build, and he's building that out of Florida, and he's got places set up all over the country. um, I do something called a living room experience. I've
Mm-hmm.
even taken this into corporate, where I talk to Black male leaders and allow a safe space for them to vent about power dynamics,
Wow.
about whiteness, about
Wow.
perfectionism, about being afraid, about being scared, about their trauma showing up at work. Like
Yeah.
I've gotten paid to come in and facilitate these conversations and coach at the same time. But that started in my living room, which is why I call it the living room experience, because
Mm-hmm.
the whole goal is to help people remove the dead inside of them and bring life back to them.
Ooh, the living. Oh, I got it. I feel it. I got it. The living room. Ooh.
Hmm.
Um, one. when I was reading that book, I do think that is one thing that they don't talk about, is the fact that rituals and community, especially when it comes to, Black men's connection as, like, being in their community and being father figures, and, being that foundation that was stripped away systematically. you know it just talked a lot about, and it's a great book, like, it's a great book, right? It talks about the archetypes of different, types of men and their journey and all that kind of stuff, but it is important to note that a lot of these things were stripped away, right? And so we can't
Yes.
just look at a people and be like, y'all slacking, when it's like like you said, you're looking at the result of a system literally trying to take Black men out of the picture, if we're gonna be real, right?
Mm.
And somebody said, state the name of the book again, and it is, why am I like blanking on
King, Magician, Lover, and Healer, I think.
Warrior, King, Warrior, Magician, Lover,
There you go.
by Robert Moore.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I have these, like my these bright lights around this camera, and with my eyesight, sometimes I'll be feeling blind when I'm reading things. I'm like, Lord, but yeah, it's a really great book. And also another really good book is Ritual by Malindoma Patrice. I don't know if anybody.
Ooh. Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Got that book in 2005. I was blown away by what happens in those forests.
Yeah.
Mm.
But it talks about the rituals, right, that are in place in the community, and how there is a deeper connection to spirit. And because there's a deeper connection to spirit, it almost feels like they're able to get through life not easier, but with a better understanding, right? And as you disconnect yourself from spirit, that gets harder and harder.
Right.
And I think as a community, it is important that we figure out how to reconnect ourselves again, right? And to be able to create those rituals once again. I know you spoke about you doing that with the boys, right? And then you named a few other people who are doing that, and you also having your living room series and doing that as well. Like, I really want to be able to, probably in the next week or so, you'll see some graphics of me. I'll probably talk to you and, like, highlight some of the things that you talked about, because I think it's important that we create those rituals, right? Especially
Yes.
when they're at a time when they're lacking, and they're not lacking because we just don't know, right? And we're negligent to know, but they're lacking because it was systematically taken away from us. So I think it's important that we, once we know that, it's important that we figure out how to rebuild that. So we talked a lot about toxic masculinity and the conditions that have created it, or or unhealthy. You know what I mean? But you get it. We talked a lot about that. This thing, right? The conditions that have created that. I would really love for us to spend time to discussing the divine masculine, right? What is the divine masculine, and how does one tap into it?
So, I was looking at this earlier, right? And it was talking about like traits of divine masculine is, looking at firmness, reason, logic, being rational, adventurous, and strength. But I think all those things are important. But I think it's about how you use those elements, those behaviors as you journey through life, right? Like there's moments when I need to be more emotional so that I can relate, as long as I'm not burning myself out by doing it, right?
Yeah.
Using my skills as an empath. But then there's moments I need to be firm because I understand if I move on that decision,
Mm.
then it may throw everything out of order and
Mm-hmm.
may break the parameters, because boundaries is not a bad thing. Order is not a bad thing. I think the problem is how we get to a place of order, right? If we do it in isolation, it feels like a dictatorship to the people in our leadership. But if
Mm.
we do it as building consensus, really getting people's voices involved, then it feels more like choice. It feels more like contribution, which is what we all want. We all want to be valuable. We want to feel fulfilled. We want to feel like that we're giving back. So when I think of divine masculine, I'm thinking about those traits, but I'm thinking about how to use them in a spiritual sense for my divine assignment. And only I know that, right?
Mm.
I may consult with my elders, my mentors. I may consult with different parts of myself, different
Mm-hmm.
parts of my talents, right? I may interview, certain things that I do well internally. Like I'm having a conversation, like, should I do this way, whatever, and then move forward. That's
Yeah.
how I see divine masculinity.
Mm. Mm.
That's how I apply it. But that also comes with having a healthy relationship with your divine feminine as well,
Mm.
which for me, I tap into when I'm meditating, when I'm going into yoga, when I'm being relaxed, right? When I'm doing the opposite of everything I just said,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because everybody has the ability to manage and experience and explore and and apply divine femininity and divine masculinity.
Mm-hmm. Oof, that was good. That was good. Ooh, so much. My brain. Sometimes when people certain topics, my brain just be buzzing. I'm like, oh, what? One thing I know, I want to check on time, right? I know you have a family and a little one. How are you doing on time?
I got it, like we might be shaping up towards a part two. I got like 5 minutes. I was about to text you, but I was like, oh,
Okay.
I'm on the phone.
I'll ask you this one question then, okay?
Okay.
I ask all my guests the same question. If you could say one thing to your future self, 10 years in the future. Now, yeah, if you could say something, not one thing. If you could say something to your future self, 10 years in the future, what would you say?
Wow. The helicopter's flying over me at the same time. That's deep. You said my
Mm.
future self, and I imagine that I would be elevated to a higher level. I would ascend in some way with wisdom. I would say, remember that day talking to Khadijah on Bag Talk,
Mm.
and remember everything you were saying.
Mm.
Those lessons aren't redundant anymore. You have now achieved a certain level of wisdom. So continue to move forward in confidence in the power of belief because you deserve all the good that's coming to you and
Mm.
more.
Mm. I mean, you deserve all the good that is coming to you and more. I absolutely love that. Greg, this has been, I knew it was going to be great, but this has been like great, great, great. What's it? Showing them how to be emotionally intuitive. I feel like people are just like buzzing in the comments. This has been a really great conversation. This is my first time having a, oh yeah, promote the book. Let's, come on, talk about it right quick.
This, yeah, well, I appreciate it. I think am I the first? I'm the first man on
Yeah.
this. On this, oh
Mm-hmm.
wow, I'm honored. This is the book I said I have that Breathing Ashes. The link is in my bio, so you can go to my bio and help me pay my mortgage. That's awesome. But
Woo-woo.
it's a poetic guide to walking through fire and coming out reborn, and it's essays, poems, and prose on what it feels to be a black male, focused on mental health, masculinity, hip hop, and some other things as well. So this is my work of 15 years, and I have another book that I'm working on that is it's a focus on looking at it's a memoir about my therapeutic experiences, and yes, it's appropriate for youth. I purposely didn't curse in it. I think I might have one word in there, but it's not even like a full out curse word. Um, and in this book, I have a piece that says I'm building a love letter for my son, and it's about how my
Mm.
father built the stage for me, and now how I'm building the stage for my son.
Wow.
And my dad really built one of the first stages I performed on because I had a poetry venue in Philly when I was like 20, and we didn't even really need a stage. But my dad, he was a carpenter. He's great with his hands. He built
Yeah.
me the stage, and he built the stage while he was in stage 4 lung cancer. And the next summer, he had passed away. But
Oh.
he actually built that stage while death was knocking on his door. Cause
Mm.
and I think about his face during that day, 95 degrees. He was so focused, like he wanted to leave something behind for me just in case. And my father is with me now. He is speaking through me now. I carry my father's energy. A lot of people say I have father energy. big brother energy. That's my dad. That's that. That's something I can't shake. It's my dad's spirit in me and over me and around me.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, absolutely beautiful. Because we can definitely feel that energy from you. I don't know. I feel like
Mm.
it definitely radiates off of you. Like that big mentor. Even when I met you, this was like a mentor, like a good, that kind of energy there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I low key. I know you said you gotta go, so I don't want to hold you too much, but I do. I'm gonna connect with you later because I would like to get a few copies of your book and be able to. I want to do like some giveaways, so I want to be
Oh,
able to give
word.
it away to the guests on here too. Because as y'all have already been able to see, Greg is incredibly powerful, and especially with his words. And his journey has been beautiful, and for him to be able to write that out and lay that out for you, um it's encouraging, and I think it'll offer solace to someone as they're going through their own healing journey, whether it's a black man or it's a black woman. So I think yeah, it's definitely something to grab, y'all. So if you
Hmm.
haven't done it already, make sure you do it. I'm also going to grab a few copies so I can give them away on my end as well. Greg, thank you. I do
You're
feel like we
welcome.
do part two because people want questions and we ain't got time.
I'm
um
I'm I'm so down with if you want me to come back in like 2 or 3 weeks. I'm so down. I know you probably got people scheduled because you don't play with your bag talk. You go in your bag. But yeah, and if people have any questions that are like super urgent, they can DM me too. Like, I can answer those as well. And thanks, Kiara. Kiara definitely copped some books the other night. I really appreciate it. And I see my man Buck and Yui are showing up. Yui would have enjoyed this. That's my youngin. He does some amazing stuff, and Buck is like one of my brothers. He's a comic. He does some wild stuff, but I love him to life. So, but yeah, I urge you to check out Khadijah's Bag Talk. Follow her and everybody else that came from my tribe and my audience. Please follow Khadijah. She's doing amazing work. You need this work.
Having them conversations, y'all.
Mhm.
So Greg, thank you. I don't know if you can go ahead and hop off. I don't know how you necessarily do that on your end because I can't figure it
Deuces.
out.
Peace.
All right, thank you.
All right.
Testing me. I have questions. Oh, doing the most. All right, y'all. That bag talk was great, but all of them are always great. There's something about having these deep conversations that I feel like are needed. And I know I say it every time, but it's real. We don't have enough of these. And if we are to get the healing that we deserve, right? If we are to reach the places that we want to go, it is a must that we have these kind of conversations, even the ones that make us uncomfortable, because that's where the growth is. And that is what Bag Talk does. At one point, and still Back Talk is very much a woman centered live, right? But I do think, just as much as it's important for us to be able to see ourselves and our sisters, I feel like it's very important for us to be able to see ourselves and our brothers and our sisters and to build community there. And so I'm grateful that Greg, was our guest. And he was able to show up and show out and give us the gems, excuse me, that we needed. Stay tuned for more. Next week's Bag Talk is going to be great as well. And yeah, I'll announce that soon. It's going to be great as well. And thank you again for joining me, y'all. I appreciate y'all. This is beautiful. Again, if you have any questions, Greg said you can go ahead and DM him. And then look out for the raffle because I really want to give a few copies of that book away. So love y'all. Have an amazing night. I hope that there were some gems that you were able to pick up on. If you're feeling it, take some time to sit with yourself and to jot a few things down. We got healing to do. So love y'all. Have an amazing day. Thank you for joining me at Back Talk. Bye.